Welcome to the Cynical Marketers Podcast, where the greatest minds in marketing, we think, discuss marketing for an audience of several. And now, your hosts, Mike and Nada. Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of the Cynical Marketers. It's episode 20.
Yes, it is. Wait, my streamer fell.
It didn't whistle, but...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't whistle.
You get the gist.
Mine is on the floor at the moment. I dropped that. Sorry, guys.
Episode 20. We have made the magical number. We started January 1st, or launched our first one, and here we are. Started from the bottom, and now we're just a little bit above the bottom.
Little bit.
Here, but
we are in the top 1% of all podcasts that get launched at any point.
That's crazy, isn't it? Because you were just looking up stats on this too, because this is something we talked about from the beginning.
Yeah.
That, you know, everyone says, start a podcast. You should start a podcast. All the gurus are out there telling business owners and CEOs, start your own podcast. And
it's kind of why we started ours
here today. We're going to talk about the reality here, and we're going to let you guys, you know, behind the curtain to see what Oz is up to.
Yeah, just a little bit.
We'll talk a little bit about our numbers and the reality of this stuff.
Right.
What it means to start this. So,
yeah.
You know,
well, we're really festive today. I kind of like our little gear. We are celebrating our 20th episode.
When you're a 1%, top 1% podcast, I mean, you know.
Yeah, okay. we got bragging rights.
Get a little bougie. It's all right.
We've got bragging rights.
Sure. You know, so Nada has some interesting info and a term that I just loved that I hadn't heard, but
I've never heard that term before. So we've said from the beginning, right, that the reason this is a big 20 episode, there's a number there, you know, we are festive today, is because the stats out there really show that 90% of all podcasts that get started don't make it past episode 3, right? And that is actually, like when I saw this number, Mike, it blew my mind. 1.8 million podcasts that quit by episode 3. 1.8 million. That is an insane number.
Yeah. Out of 2 million that start, right? Yeah.
Out of the 2 million that start. And that 200,000 that stick around, 90% of those folks will quit before episode 20, which is why this is such a big episode for us, right? That means that if we've made it to here, we are in that top 1%. That's wild.
Yep.
That's so wild.
And you know, the reality of it is too, why that happens. And we'll show some of our numbers here.
Yeah.
You know, and Nada is perfect for this because, you know, Nada is new to the content side of things and those metrics. And, you know, so Nada's just like you guys out there, you know, works in marketing, but you guys know there's how many different jobs in marketing. So we don't all do the same things. We're not aware of the same things. So this is the reason why. And when you look at some of our numbers that we'll talk about a little bit here, the reality of it. Now, we look like we're a big, massive podcast, right? I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah, right,
from our home offices.
Yeah, I know, right? But, you know, what's our average views? You know, what's some of our numbers on our stuff?
Oh, gosh. So we've done 20 episodes so far, obviously not counting this 20th one, but so 19 episodes. And our lowest viewership was 3 on one of the episodes, and our highest was 37. And still, this was our first episode that we did that got the most views, which was kind of what we've talked about. And we'll talk about that new term we just learned. That was our Surviving Black Friday Cyber Monday episode. That was our first episode. It got the most views, you know, and we started January 1st, right? So that has been, so we've ranged anywhere between 3 and 37. Mostly landing around 10 to 12 views per episode. So that's been our reality. We're not mad about that though. If you guys are expecting to launch a podcast and immediately, especially with a business podcast, and immediately get hundreds or thousands of views, you're in for a treat.
That is what breaks so many people down. And in podcasts, and then the same thing is true in their social media content. People have this view that just because I started something, I should get millions of views immediately. And if I don't, then it's a failure and I'm going to stop. And it's just not going to happen, especially not for it's a business podcast. No. You know, these things are not everyone's going to be Joe Rogan. And even Joe Rogan wasn't Joe Rogan. It took him years. He's been doing it for
Decades.
years to get to where he's
Yeah.
at. And Alex Hormozy, a Gary Vee, any of these names that you know, Mr. Beast is another one. Mr. Beast talks about it. He shows his timeline of 5 years of work in anonymity, toiling, before just blip, it just takes off then all of a sudden. Hits a tipping point for some reason. But this is what discourages people and why 99% quit.
Yeah.
Because these things take work, right? It takes work. And
It
we
does
don't
take
put,
work.
look here, folks, we're not paying anything for this because we're doing it because we enjoy doing it. We like talking about this stuff.
Yep.
But we're not paying for promotion. We are doing this 100% organically. There's a bit of an experiment to this too.
Right.
And then, we use an AI tool to edit.
Right.
And then
And
that's pretty much it.
And to really do most of our captions and titles and different things. So, and we've talked about that when we talked about AI and ChatGPT and using it for copy. So, we are using the tools that are easily accessible to us. We're also, as Mike said, not doing any sort of paid promotions behind this. We are doing our organic posts. We're posting the episode primarily when it launches on Wednesdays, a new episode. We post about it on LinkedIn through the Cynical Marketers page. We repost it on our own LinkedIn feed. And I think just given what we've been doing, we're actually doing really well. I mean, the metrics are a little bit nutty. So I will say that because as Mike alluded to it, the content side is new to me. I have been in retention. When you are looking at email, SMS, loyalty, those numbers pretty much stay consistent. They have a little bit of a lift, but they don't go crazy like some of the content stuff does. So since launch on January 1st, we had 16.4 thousand views, total watch time of 88.4 hours, and we've had 22 subscribers. Two of those are us. So that is for both our long form, so like our actual podcast episodes, and then the shorts that we post on YouTube. On just the episodes alone, right? So our full videos alone, we've had 302 views, 7.8 thousand impressions, 1.2 click through, and an average viewer time of 6 minutes and 10 seconds. So if you think that like most of our episodes are between 20 and 30 minutes, we've been averaging around 20-ish for the last at least 10 episodes or so. I mean, that's not bad. That's 30.
I think we're doing very well.
I think that is a little under 30% of content viewed on average, which I think is pretty great for us being unknowns, right?
We are unknowns. Neither one of us are celebrities. We're not paying for any reach or anything, right? There's no money put into this. It's an organic play for us. Right. I think it is going well, but this is the reality that business owners, anyone who's getting into content, and not even just podcasts aside, and because you have to be doing your content. If you're not making a podcast, fine, I get it, because this takes work. But you're doing content for your social media. That's the discouraging thing for people. And that comparison when they look around and they think, oh my gosh, these other people are just so famous. Or they're looking at someone on LinkedIn posting saying, here we are with
LinkedIn.
Like, I just saw a guy that I follow on TikTok that I don't get. And he seems good enough. He's an SEO guy. And you might not know this name, but he comes from the SEO world. His name is Rand Fishkin, very famous SEO guy, started Moz. But he had Rand Fishkin on his podcast. I'm like, how did that happen? Like there's something going on, right?
Right.
And then you start looking around at other people, and this is where that comparison is the thief of joy comes in. You're just like, we're failing at this. And are you really? Just because, if we get 30, 40 views right now, we only just started this in January.
Right.
Alex Hormozy said it was 100 podcasts before they cracked.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's Alex Hormozy, right?
Yeah,
who already has
amount of work. Right.
a built-in audience, who's already been working for like the last decade in this space. So what's interesting to me, and I think Mike, like what you alluded to with the metrics, is the insanity with YouTube Shorts. right? So like one of our YouTube shorts will have like 2,000 views and another one will have 8. These are metrics that I am not, and same is kind of true across the board for our social media. Like we are on Instagram and we're on TikTok. And so some things will hit. We post there once a day, although there was a moment in time where I've missed a few days, here and there since January, because this is also something that I don't do that is new to me to post content, right? So staying consistent is a lot easier said than done. And that's coming from somebody who's always given people advice to stay consistent on social media. But the viewership on the short form videos, so like the, 60 seconds, 90 seconds reels or TikTok videos or YouTube shorts, whatever you want to call them, is wild. And there is no reason for these metrics to vary so much, right? Like we are kind of pretty consistent with our hashtags and our captions. And, they will vary drastically on one platform from one video to another, but also very, very drastically on different platforms. So like one video can get a couple thousand views on one platform and then get like 0 on the other one. And that's been something for me that's been a learning curve to get used to. I'm not used to those metrics.
It's hard to not get discouraged because you look at those metrics and it's so hard. I know it is. Yeah. But, if you go out and look for podcasts, what's out there, and the business podcasts are kind of rare. Mm-hmm. And find a business podcast that is still producing podcasts even. So you might go and find, if you Google it, you'll get a list of top 10 blah blahs, right? And then you click on that and like none of those podcasts are still producing. Yeah. Even. They're all.
I have more stats on this, Mike, because I looked it up, right? So like for my own sanity, right? So we now have some new goals we got to set, right? So the average lifespan of a podcast is 6 months. So our next goal is to make it to the end of June, right? So to make it full 6 months and to get into July. So that's exciting. So maybe we'll do this again in July. That's not far for us, right? A couple more episodes.
May 14th, this episode will post of 2025 in case some future person, after we're huge, goes back through our library.
Somebody will. I have faith in this.
So we're not far from that, but yeah.
Yeah. So 6 months, that's the average lifespan of a podcast. And then less than 1% of all podcasts that make it past that 6 month mark publish consistently after the first year. Mm-hmm. So if they make it to 12 months, they will then drop off and not publish consistently. And we've actually seen this because this is a Pod News 2024 source said that business podcasts die basically like after 12 months. And then the average business podcast gets under 150 downloads per episode. So this is an average business podcast that includes big business names that we just mentioned, right? So if you are getting into this and you're starting a business podcast, know that you are up, like this is an uphill battle, right? Like you're not going to blow up and have millions of views and be, I think the next Joe Rogan, I guess. Like I don't really know.
What I always caution, because over the last years I've been consulting, a lot of the CEOs talk about it. Like we should start a podcast. I'm like, okay, who? And there are a lot of reasons they die in a year. And this happens, like we were going to talk about employee generate content at one point, but the CEO doesn't want to do it. So, hey, let's have the marketing people make a podcast. I'm like, okay, but are they going to be with you in a year?
Yeah.
What happens when they move on to their next role? Now what happens to your podcast? Mm-hmm. And you had them, they're building up a great personal brand and they're getting a lot of awesome personal equity, and then they can take their podcast skills now with them. But
they'll take your listeners with them too.
It's hard to do.
But there is a name for this, Mike.
What's it
that
called?
We've learned. It's Podfade. Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. So I learned that too, like trying to kind of look up some stats around podcast. It's really just being fatigued around doing the podcast. And it does take, we're not doing any kind of big production. We're obviously both in our home offices. We've had guests who've joined us online. We don't do these as like in person in an office with a huge camera set up, anything big like that. And we're really kind of hoping you all stick around for the actual content because we've had some good things to say about marketing, but to think, and even for us, it's like, oh, let's schedule this and then something will come up and let's reschedule. And then trying to organize around other people's schedules and, you know, having guests on, which we have kind of a lineup coming up. We have a few people lined up that, you know, we're trying to find time to talk to. It is a lot of work. You know, it is a lot of work. And then you have to maintain presence on social media. If you are not buying, you know, your followers, your likes, your comments, any of that, it does really take some work and some consistency. And, you know, I'm happy. We've been very consistent. We've been really good, both on social media and then showing up here once a week since January 1st. But, you know, it's apparently a lot of people just fatigue out.
This is the grind of it that people don't get. They see again on social media the Sean Ryan show clips and like, doesn't this look awesome? The funny comedians.
Right.
And then that's a thing too, is when you look at the types of podcasts that are out there that gain that popularity, when you're going to talk about your business, understand it. Unless you are creating something new, you have a brand new product. And even in that case, then you're going to have to explain to people what this is. But your business is likely not going to be very interesting to everybody. But it doesn't matter because you're only talking to that audience of people who are potential customers of yours. And that's the point of doing this stuff, you know?
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's some, and this is the thing though, too. We don't want to discourage any of you from starting your own podcast, right? But just understand the reality of it so that you don't actually get discouraged and be that 99% that quits before episode 20. There's definitely value in here. So if you are thinking about starting a podcast, I do have some... Apparently I'm a stats nerd today. I do have some interesting metrics about that as well. 54% of podcast listeners say they're more likely to consider buying from a brand if they listen to the podcast versus if they see an ad. So that I thought was pretty interesting, right? Business podcast popularity is growing between, it is in the top 5 most consumed podcast categories globally across professionals ages 25 and 44. So just keep in mind that, like, yes, that seems like a huge group, but also a professional is really anybody that's working, right? In that age group. So they're going to gravitate towards podcasts that make sense for them, right? That's not the entirety of your audience. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, we've only got 37 views on one video, but there's 5% of folks globally ages 25 to 45 that are listening to this stuff. You know, that's to know that there is an audience out there. Speak to your, you know, your niche audience. And then 67% of business podcast listeners say they trust host-read recommendations over traditional ads. So that's kind of, I thought that was interesting. And I thought a lot of those were pretty interesting stats. So there's definitely some value in what we're doing.
A couple of our fans own businesses. If you want us to do a read, we are open for sponsorships, everybody. Would you like to reach potentially dozens of listeners?
Well, maybe a little less than a dozen, but we'll get there.
Yeah, no. So it is really interesting. And we talk a lot on our other social media. You know, one of the things I talk about a lot is people buy from who they know and who they trust.
Right. Yes.
And you speaking on a podcast gives people an opportunity to get to see you, get to know you, you know. And maybe you found, like, I've been doing content for a long time. You found like, wow, people I don't think like me. I've been out here for a long time. It's supposed to establish trust. I don't think people like what I got to say.
I mean, are you know, to be fair though, Mike has been doing content for Round to It Marketing for about 1.5 years now. Maybe a tad bit longer. And he's got some great videos, Mike, like some great helpful tips for small businesses, entrepreneurs, even larger businesses, I would say. But again, this is another thing that's been new to me is the metrics on the content varies so much that I'm like, how do you stay sane trying to find trends or kind of trying to figure out like the next topic that you're going to talk about or, you know, all of those things. Like it's so hard. You know, and I know you always say don't chase the trend, right?
I don't chase trends. For clients, I track metrics daily. For my stuff, I never look at the metrics.
Right. I know this about you.
I will never look, you know, because it doesn't matter. Because whatever they're telling you, and people are like, oh, this is supposed to guide you in your content. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Your content should be evergreen, really, the 80 to 90% of your content. And by evergreen, I mean stuff that it's not tied to a date. It's not trendy, right? Because you can reuse it, and it's talking about your business, how you help people, that kind of stuff. And I just don't look at it then. So you keep doing it. Because like I had a video on our Round To It on TikTok that's got over 2 million views on it now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So then, the other gurus, the younger ones would say, well, the market told you that's that type that they want. I'm like, I get that. But that was a video kind of about PR and my experience doing PR for one of my partners and the CEO of our company. But that's not what we want to do. I do not want to get hired by anyone to do PR. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So while that piece of content hit, that's not what I want to do.
Right.
So I'm not going to lean into that, just to chase views.
No, don't chase views.
Right? So it doesn't matter. And that's why I don't look at it. And you don't chase trends, and you just stay consistent. And it's the harder thing when you're like, well, our last video got 4 views and 3 of those are friends and 1's me. But even people, here's the disheartening thing for you. Nada told you at the kickoff of this, our #1 video was our first one. And that's because a lot of friends and family are like, oh, we'll check you out. It's so exciting. You're launching your podcast.
Yeah.
That fades immediately. Your friends and family don't give a crap about anything you're doing. They got their own problems. Everyone has their own thing going on.
Yep.
Hey, I hope you succeed.
Right.
And there are people out there wishing against you, of course, but your friends and family, and even if they continue to support you, are your friends and family in the audience of your potential customers? Likely not.
No.
So it doesn't even really matter if they're out there supporting you.
Right.
Although
Lance, I would like to call out Lance.
Yes,
thank you. Lance, thank you for your continued support. Yes.
Lance and Matt are 2.
Yep. Jake has been a fan of ours too lately. So
you too. When you get started, your friends and family, very supportive. Everyone's going to love it. Like, oh my gosh, you're starting a podcast. And while it feels like everybody is, they're not. Not everybody is. So when you're doing it, people have that visceral reaction because they would be too afraid and nervous to do it. They're not getting on camera here.
Right.
So they're looking at you like, wow, you're so brave. And then, but that drops off.
It fades really quickly. Yeah.
And then you don't have that anymore. So now what are you going to do? And if you're going to keep doing this stuff, and you should, podcasting, your content, building a personal brand, building your business brand, building equity out there, you have to keep driving at
Just
this.
keep showing up. And I mean, for us, this has been, for me at least, and I think like us, both of us, I can speak for both of us on this one, I think. It's been a lot of fun to show up weekly, talk about things that we're interested in from the marketing side, have some really cool people come in and join us on a few, episodes. Having more people interested to come and join us as well has been a lot of fun. Like, ooh, we feel, like now I'm starting to feel important because people on LinkedIn are reaching out. So that's been kind of cool. But really, I think that's the message, right? Stay consistent. Let's make it to 6 months and then we'll celebrate again. I'll keep the glasses, Mike. I kind of like these.
Cake time? Yeah.
So
we'll do it again.
We'll do it again in July, the first week of July, and then let's make it to a year. Let's make it to 1/1/2026.
We will keep driving at this. I don't quit.
I know this about you.
You really have to because to me, when you start anything, if you're a business and you start a social media, I don't think anything looks worse for businesses when they have their website and they've got their badges of their social media channels, and then somebody clicks on it and their last post was 2 years ago. I think that's a terrible look for a business. I think if you're going to start it, you need to keep going, because nothing, I think, looks worse than you quitting at this.
Yeah.
Don't why did you quit? Did you fail? Right. What happened? So...
And then it puts in question your business and
to it, then don't do it.
Right.
But if you start it, you can't quit.
Stick with it.
So there we go. All right, everybody. That's another
Big 20.
Nearly award-winning episode of the Cynical Marketers. 20 episodes in. It's crazy that we've made it to this.
I know. I'm having so much fun.
See, right? We're not so cynical, really. It's a funny name.
Yeah, we've gotten some hate on the name, but I hope you guys are enjoying our content.
We appreciate it, everybody. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll be back for episode 21. We'll see you then.